Well, hello everybody. How are we doing today? Good, I hope. So, guess what we're going to talk about today? It'd be pirates, matey. First off, do you know why we're called pirates? Do ye? We just are. Huh? That's solid, right? How about this? Where do pirates go when they retire? We go to the archives. Huh? Pretty good. Anyway, okay. So today, I thought we should talk a little bit about some souvenirs that were available at Disneyland and Walt Disney World, both respectively from the grand opening in '55, give or take, and 1971. And what these are a souvenir called a piece of 8 doubloon. You can see this one here, and we'll do some close-ups. The silver one here, this is from Disneyland, and this brass one is actually from Walt Disney World. Now, just a little history, and like I said, I'll get you some close-up pictures of me coins in a minute, maybe. But both at Disneyland and Walt Disney World, you could get these doubloons at the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. They could be purchased at that time. They were the pirate-themed arcades that were located at the Pirates of the Caribbean's attractions, the exit, if you will. Today they're gift shops, but back then at Disneyland, originally it was known as the Pirate Arcade Museum. And at some point it became the Pieces of 8 Arcade, and then eventually it just became the Pieces of 8 gift shop. And at Walt Disney World it was originally called the Pieces of 8 Arcade, and I believe it became the Caribbean Arcade at some point. Now all of this was essentially the brainchild, the souvenirs, of the Imagineer Sam McKim. And as I understand it, again, not only was it his idea, but he was instrumental in the placement of the machines and kind of the entire concept. Now, the idea would be is you could purchase one of these, and I've got a couple pictures of the machines I'll show you in a second. I don't know what the price was, but you'd buy it, and it would allow you to sort of die in or press in a name or some sort of message into this doubloon, which you could wear as, I suppose, a necklace or a keychain. But here, take a look. Here's a couple of pictures of these, I'm not sure what you call them, we'll just say die machines. Here, take a look maybe. Right, okay. So these machines were located, as I said, at the arcade locations at both castle parks. And from the beginning, the Walt Disney World machine, they started with this brass souvenir. This eventually only lasted, I think, till 77 or 78, and they switched to silver like Disneyland. And for the longest time, most folks thought that Disneyland only ever did the silver souvenir. And recently, I guess it was unearthed or determined that that wasn't necessarily true, that originally, at least for the first couple of weeks, for the first little while, there was a couple of dozen of brass, we'll call them coins or doubloons, in the machine. And a lot of cast members used them before they were put what's known as on stage. So there are actually some floating around in the world today that say, you can't see it, I'll show you pictures here in a moment, but like this brass one, it actually says Walt Disney World, and the brass one from Disneyland obviously said Disneyland, as do the silver. But here, take a look. Here is the Disney brass, the Disneyland brass, followed by the Disneyland silver. I'll show you the front side, which looks like this, and then the back side. You'll see the brass and then the front of the brass and silver, and then the back, and you'll see the skull and crossbones, and you'll clearly see Pirates of the Caribbean and Disneyland. And then I'll follow with the brass and silver of Walt Disney World, and you'll be able to see the Walt Disney World. And take note, the brass of the Walt Disney Worlds had a little bit of red paint or Cherokee kind of paint in them. I don't know if it was painted beautifully to begin with or always meant to look aged. My hunch is always aged. But I thought it was kind of interesting. But here, take a look at a couple of these pictures, and then I'll see you on the other side. Right, you kind of get the idea. This is what the coins look like. So the brass, and again, I have a Walt Disney World brass one, which is relatively rare. And as you can see, it's got the red paint. I think you can see, hopefully, at the bottom there, the Walt Disney World, and you can see this belonged to somebody, obviously, at one time. Arr. Now, about 1980 or so, they actually ordered a little change for Disneyland, and I think this is called like a Type 2 large backing, and I'll show you a close-up picture. This is the one I have. You can see they sort of went from the skull and crossbones, and they went to like a big pirate face there. This one is actually really, really rare, because the problem with this is no one thought about the area needed for anybody to die in or press in a message or their name. So these ended up being sold more or less as keychains. They just wouldn't work in the machine. And these existed from about 1980 to, probably about 1990, give or take. But you won't find any that have their names pressed in them. Because of that, a lot of these, since they were probably put on keychains and not worn as necklaces, if you will, they've been lost through time. So these are actually, even though they're not the oldest Disneylands, they're probably some of the rarest. I have one. But here, take a look. Here's a close-up. Go ahead. Right, kind of cool. Eventually, obviously, all of this stuff sort of fell out of favor, and by the early 2000s, they had left the arcade area or the gift shops around Pirates of the Caribbean and have drifted into lesser known locations and eventually removed from the parks altogether. Like most things, time passes and things change. But I thought it was kind of interesting, and I'm very fortunate that I have a Disneyland doubloon and a Walt Disney brass, which are rare, not ridiculously rare. If you find a Disneyland brass, that's like having solid gold, man. Those are going to be amazing. Right, kind of fun and cool. I think so anyway. What do you think a pirate's favorite doll would be? Well, it'd be a Barbie, of course. Hey, how do you save a pirate? Well, you'd give him CPR, maybe. CPR. Anyway, hope you got a kick out of this. Again, none of these are terribly rare other than that brass Disneyland. I thought it would be kind of fun just to share them with you. There's a couple of websites, if you go to Google, that give you a tremendous amount of information. They're quite helpful. Just another souvenir from the past that ends up in a drawer. Time passes and they become more and more valuable. They obviously aren't going to bring these back, at least I don't think, or if they do, they'll be completely different. Anyway, in this world, when you can be anything you want, you be kind, you be humble, you be forgiving, and we'll see you next time. Bye, matey. Arr.